Welcome to today's webinar. It is about SAP Field Service Management, the release 2305, the new release. My name is Bernhard Weiersmüller, and I'm happy to present to you the latest and greatest features of the new release in the next couple of minutes. It will take around 20 minutes. Well, here's the agenda. What's new in release 2305? We're going to talk about two new things in the master data area, mainly about skills. Then I'm going to move on to a change in the activity, and we move on to some new features in the service call area. It's about filtering and some priority setup. Then we have new features in the service map, which I personally like a lot. And finally, we're going to talk about two new features in the administration, the newly created policy groups, and also about business rule variables. First, master data skill levels. This is about skills. Remember, skills are being used for find matching technician algorithms or for automatic planning algorithms to find a matching person. In the past, this worked quite well, but it was a bit a lacking feature because, for example, you couldn't define different level of skills, or you couldn't group, or you couldn't have hierarchies. All that has been now fixed, at least part of, in the new release. First, we have now skill levels, or in FSM terms, it's called scales. You can use scales to define levels of skills. So here in the picture, you can, for example, see we have different levels like professional, intermediate, beginner. You can define them however you like them. They define in the planning board settings. I'm going to show that now how to do this. You go over to the planning board. Then you click on the settings and configuration. And in there you will see a thing called master data. And then there is the scales. So scales is about skill levels. Here I have defined my scale. I can create a new one, and I can then also add the different levels with my own naming here. This scale is then later used when you define a new group, a hierarchy, or a new skill. You will see that in the next topic. Let's move on to the next topic, also around skills, and this time we're now going to talk about groups and skill hierarchy. It is now possible to organize your skills into so-called groups. You can have a group of skills, and below each group header, you can have a hierarchy of skills. This sounds very nice, and I was also interested in it, although I find something is a bit strange, because when you then assign, let's say, a top level skill, in this example here, I assign Asian languages to one of my technicians, I would have thought that also the below skills would have been given to the technician, but that's not the case. He only gets the top level skill, or the skill that you're currently looking at. Maybe this is by design, I'm not absolutely sure here, or maybe this is going to change again, so please try it out. All right, let's have a look in the application. To do so, I'm going to go into master data module, and then skills. And now here I get the new UI with groups and skill levels and hierarchies. So I have already defined two groups. If I open a group, I can see this group consists of two skills, Asian languages, European language, with some skills also below that. So here we have a skill hierarchy. So this is my hierarchy here, and this one is the group of skills below it. When you want to create new skills or groups, you click up here and you decide, do you want a skill or a group? When you define a new group, you can then click here, and here you will have to select the skill, which we just looked at in the topic before this one. This will then define what kind of levels you're providing inside this group. When you want to create a skill, you click on skill, you give it a name, you select the group, and for example, we want to add some new language here. Let's assume Dutch. We want to add Dutch. Then we select a group. It's a language. And my parent will be European language. And the skill scale is already here. So let's create that one. And now I have Dutch below my European language skill inside the group languages. If you want to add people to that skill, you have to click on Edit up here and then Assigned People. And then you click on Add. And then you can add people. For example, George, he has this skill. And I can also define then the skill level coming from the scales. And I can even define, is it a permanent assignment or limited or recurring? For example, limited can even be during a day. So let's say between 5 and 6 in the morning, he is able to have some skill. Quite interesting for certain use cases. So you see, it's nice to work with these groups and hierarchies and skills. Let's move on to the next one. And this is about activities. In the past, when you wanted to add some EMME stands for expense, material, mileage, and efforts, you had to go into the time and material journal and add it there. This has been now improved because you can also do so directly from inside an activity. You click on the journal and then you add it from there. And then it will link you in the time and material journal where you can then do this additional entry. Let's look at that in my application, here. I'm going back to the planning board and I'm going to select an activity, which I will open in the detail screen. And from there, I can then add that EMME object. So let's assume I want to go into activity 39. I click on it. I get the pop-up with my activity details. And then here is the journal. Clicking on it will reveal what kind of chargeable or non-chargeable efforts, expense, materials, and mileages you already have. And now let's create another one. For example, let's add an effort. And you see it just jumps over into the time and material journal, but it has already opened a creating time effort screen. And then you can add the time here, for example, 3 hours, create, and then that is already being added here. Quite a nice addition and a nice shortcut if you are inside an activity in the planning board. Then let's move on to the next one, service call list, use UDFs for filters. This is coming from a customer request, as many others. And the idea was that you can also use filters with UDFs. To do so, you go into the list of service calls. I'm going to show that list of service calls over here. And now, if you then want to filter, remember the filters up here, you click on more, and then you can select any UDF now, which is coming from the service call, for example, this one, and select the ones you like, and then your list gets filtered according to the value from that specific UDF. Let's move on to our next topic, and that is about custom priority setup. Custom priority setup means that you can have your own additional priorities coming from your ERP, for example. It just also means when you have an ERP attached that you can't add new service calls priorities from the planning board. You don't have the plus here. If you have a standalone system, you will see the plus where you can then add additional service call priorities. If you have a business one, for example, you're stuck with these three because business one doesn't support more than that. If you have a different ERP, there might be more, and it will show you the ERP priorities then here. And you should also actually be able to change the color. Unfortunately, this currently doesn't work. There is already a request from my side at SAP to fix that, and I hope in the near future this will be fixed. I can show you where it should be. You go to settings and configuration, you go to service call, and then you have service call priorities. In this case, I'm in the standalone system. There you have a plus, and you can change the colors. if you have an ERP system like this one here, I'm also going to do the same thing. I'm also going to service call. You see there's no plus. And when you select the color, you want to change a color. For example, I want to have it a bit more red, and I save it. It will not change the color currently. I guess this is going to be fixed. So if you're wondering, this seems to be an open little issue here. Our next topic is about the service map. The service map is making big steps towards the planning board functionality. In that case, we are now seeing reserved times and absences in the sidebar in the technician's schedule. Let's see that in action. Here's my system. I'm going to first show the planning board, and we, for example, see that on Monday, means yesterday, we have a FSM training ongoing for this Mr. Renholm here, and it will then also show up in the map. Means if I open the map, it will open in a separate tab. Then we should also see that ongoing in the technician's side view. So let's select the technician Renholm, and we, for example, see this one here is an absence, and the one from yesterday is shown like this rectangle, this black rectangle here. If you now want to arrange an activity for him, you can plan it, but it will drop you an error because he's already booked with some training. Then another option in the service map is about rearranging activities. The idea is that in the sidebar, you can arrange around, move around activities. You can also release, you can also unassign activities in here in the sidebar directly. You don't have to go to the planning board. And rearranging or assigning activities will also now automatically lead to a rerouting of the in the map. So you will then see the new route. You don't have to do anything. The route, it gets updated automatically. Let's have a look. Here is my map again. I'm going to show the routes for Denholm for today, and we can see he has currently 2 jobs and will travel around here. Now he has 2 jobs now. Good. Now I have a third one down here, which is marked in blue, means it's not assigned yet. And that job is the one down here. You see activity 4 is waiting to be planned. This is showing here. And if I now put it here, check out the routing here in the map, and you will see now that this has been added to the route. Also, if you move around the job, you can do so, and it could be that also the routing might change a little bit. Or if you unassign a job, the route will also be reflecting this change. Pretty nice addition to the map functionality. Let's move on to the administration portal. An interesting new feature is called policy groups. It will, or it does, replace user groups, which you have known for a long time now. User groups is all about permissions and other little features. And now it is like a one-stop for permissions, but also it incorporates the read model filters, which I'm going to show in a second. I think they were also in a separate menu below the user groups before. That has now incorporated into one. That's not the only change. The second change, which I like personally very much, is that depending if you're looking at permissions or sync rules or UI configuration, the list of objects is filtered so that only objects which relate to sync rules or relate to UI configuration will show up. Means this list can change. Let's have a look and go into my administration portal. And then we have the policy groups here on the left being on account level. So this replaces the user groups. This is what you already know, but when you then click, it looks a bit different. And we want to now click on edit. And then we see all this information, like general information, then the permissions for each object. Clicking on it, you can then look and change at the permissions over here. Then we have the sync rules. Sync rules are not available for every object. You see the list is much lower. The list is much, how can I say, much smaller than the list of permissions over here. You see that here you have all the objects, sync rules, you only have a little bit, a few objects here. Same goes if I go for UI configuration. You see the list only shows the objects which are relevant for UI configuration. And last but not least, the read model filters have now been moved into here. With this, you can, for example, add a SQL or a core SQL query here, which allows you to further filter, for example, which technicians should be shown on the planning board. This is a very interesting topic here. It's called read model filters. Well, let's move on to our last topic for today. The last topic for today is business rules, also in the administration, and it's about the variables in there. Personally, I'm very happy about this change. It was long due because in the past, it was not possible to move around variables inside the business rule. It means when you wanted to add a new variable, and this new variable would then be, or other variables should be depending on that variable, you would have to delete all the other variables first, add the new variable, and then below that new variable, add the old variables again, which is quite a tedious process. This has now finally been improved, and we're going to look at it in the administration. First of all, I'm going into my company, and then I'm going to click on business rules, and I'm selecting any business rule. Clicking on edit will reveal what I'm going to talk about. Here, the variables in the middle in the trigger section. Remember, business rules are used to do automation. If this happens, then do that. The trigger tells you when is something happening, and the action is then what should be happening. And to fulfill the action, you need variables like a service call or a technician's email address, and you fill in the variables in the trigger section. So this new feature is all about those variables. And now you see, if you wanted to use the activity variable, for example, over here, it needs to be defined at least one line before, like in this case. But what happened in the past, if you wanted to have a new variable added, which will then make, for example, the service call would be depending on that new variable, you couldn't put it in the middle here. You would have to delete the rows and add the new one and the old one behind. Now you can just click here on the three dots and click on move up or move down or delete. And this is pretty nicely done, and finally allows you to rearrange the variables with the click of a mouse button. All right, this is the final step. Do you have any questions? Okay, there is a question. Is there a webinar with an introduction to FSM and integration with SAP? Yes, the recording will be available on our YouTube channels. So if you just, I can send out the link, or you just find it on YouTube if you Google for core systems. We have our own channel, and all the videos are there. We have a lot of videos in our YouTube channels, also about starting sessions in FSM and many other topics. So make sure you check out our YouTube channel. Any more questions? No. Good. Then I would like to thank you very much, and please again accept the apology for the delay. I made a planning mistake. Shouldn't happen again. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for participating, and I hope to hear and see you again next time. Goodbye and have a nice day.